Today, we're diving into a really fascinating and honestly pretty radical idea. It's all about trying to fix a huge power imbalance in our justice system. We're talking about what happens when it's just you up against a giant financial institution in court. Just imagine that for a second. You get a legal notice from your bank. Whether you're a small business owner, a farmer, an everyday consumer, your stomach just drops. That feeling of being completely and utterly outmatched, that's the problem we're digging into today. So, to really get what's going on here, we have to start with a fundamental legal idea. It's called equality of arms, and it's supposed to be the absolute bedrock of any fair justice system. To put it simply, it just means that everybody deserves a fair shot in court. The scales of justice aren't supposed to be tipped just because one side has way more money and resources than the other. And listen, this isn't just some lofty academic ideal. This quote from the Australian Attorney General makes it clear. It's an official standard. The whole system is meant to prevent one side from having this massive built-in advantage from the get-go. Right. But that's the billion-dollar question, isn't it? When you move away from the legal theory and into the real world of a financial dispute, well, a very different picture starts to emerge. And I mean, just look at this contrast. It's so stark. On one side, you've got the big institutions. They've got entire in-house legal teams, top-tier external law firms on speed dial, and a legal budget that might as well be infinite. And on the other side, you've got a regular person, maybe a small business, dipping into their life savings, trying to figure out legal aid, all while dealing with just unbelievable personal stress. It is the classic David versus Goliath story, every single time. So the big question is, how do you even begin to balance those scales? Well, that's where this new proposal comes into play. The idea is to give David a much better slingshot. It's called the Financial Services Law Force, or the FSLF for short. The core idea here is to create a permanent, specialized legal body. This isn't some temporary committee. It's meant to be a permanent fixture in the justice system, built for one thing, to handle these incredibly lopsided disputes. Now, this thing wouldn't be for every single legal case out there. It's got a laser focus on protecting consumers, small and medium-sized businesses, and farmers. And here's the absolute kicker, the most important part. It only kicks into gear when the big financial institution is the one starting the legal fight. And this right here is the simple, powerful, and kind of brilliant mechanic behind the whole thing. If a bank or another big provider decides to take one of their customers to court, they have to put up the money to fund a fair fight for both sides. Okay, so that's the big picture. It sounds interesting, right? But how would this actually work in practice? Let's get into the nuts and bolts of it. So here's how it would go down step by step. Let's say a bank decides to sue a small business. Before that case can even get started, the bank has to pay into a central fund. And get this, the amount they pay in has to match their own legal budget for the case. That money then activates the FSLF, which turns around and provides the small business with an expert legal defense. It's a system designed to completely neutralize that huge financial advantage right from the very beginning. Okay, but a really important question pops up here. Does this work both ways? What if it's the customer who wants to sue the bank? And the proposal is crystal clear on this. Nope, absolutely not. This isn't some blank check for anyone to sue a bank for free. The funding mechanism is only, and I mean only, triggered when the side with all the power and money decides to initiate the lawsuit. All right, I know what you're probably thinking. This sounds pretty expensive for the banks, doesn't it? Won't they just pass those costs on to the rest of us? Well, the proposal argues that it's a bit more nuanced than that. So let's break it down. First off, the cost is tied directly to a bank's choice to go to court. If they don't sue, they don't pay. Simple. This creates a massive incentive to try other things first, like mediation, which is way cheaper for everyone. Second, it could actually make banks a little more frugal with their own lawyers. If they know every dollar they spend on their legal team has to be matched for the other side, they might think twice about hiring the most expensive firm in the country. And, over the long run, it might stop these super expensive, multi-year legacy cases from piling up in the first place. Now, an idea this big doesn't just live in a vacuum. It doesn't just affect the two people in the courtroom. It would send some serious ripples throughout the entire financial justice system. And you can see here just how it would plug into the system. Dispute resolution services? They'd get a huge boost because banks now have a really good reason to settle early. Regulators?
they'd suddenly get a stream of independent, real-time intelligence about how these companies are behaving. And maybe most importantly, community legal aid centers would get a much-needed injection of funding and expert support, which would amplify their ability to help people across the board.
Of course, for any of this to work, the FSLF has to be fiercely independent. You can't have the fox guarding the henhouse, right? So who would actually be in charge?
The proposal is very specific here. It calls for an oversight board made up of government and consumer group representatives. But the most important part is who's not at the table. No banks, no private law firms that work for banks, no one with a direct financial stake in the outcome. The whole structure is designed from the ground up to be impartial and avoid any inappropriate external influence.
So, when you boil it all down, the financial services law force is a radical, but actually pretty simple idea. It's trying to make that core principle of a fair fight a reality by making the party that starts the legal battle financially responsible for it.